Hey, y'all, it is Heather, and I am so glad to be here with my friend who I just recently met, Jabez, who is an educator and is really in the service of helping people on a diverse platform, right? Jabez, you seem to work with a variety of people. Welcome, Jabez. I am so glad to have you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Heather. I'm very glad to have met you, and I'm very glad to be on this as well. I mean, it's always good to connect, and it's always good to network with people and understand their perspective of things as well.
Oh, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Connecting is, I think, important. I think we do our best work in collaborative efforts with others who bring their wisdom and experience. And you have a lot of wisdom and experience working with a variety of folks. So kind of give my audience a flavor of who you work with and what you do and how you do it.
Definitely. So I'll just start off with like a very small scope, right? I mean, if you look at my whole life, for example, I started off my whole I was being brought up in South Africa and Mozambique, and so I've always lived my life in Africa, right? And when you see that, and then I've transitioned coming to India, and I've come to my home place where things have been completely different, and there's a paradigm shift, right? So you've got to adapt. You have to keep understanding the psyche of people, understanding how people treat you. The differences in society as well. Now, putting up with all that, even if you've had wonderful parents like I've had, who could take you to the process, take you through everything step by step, and actually guide you, you still have to physically face the outside world,
Yeah.
right? And when you go ahead and face the outside world, you tend to start dealing with a few issues here and there, and that's when you understand, oh, so this is not actually how it is. You were in a bubble, and the bubble burst,
Yeah.
right? And that's how it came out, right? So I finished my school, I finished uni, and then I went into work, and it hit me straight up that the professional hierarchy and how things are dealt in the business side of things are not how it's dealt inside your home, right? And so basically that started, like, it started changing my perspective and notion of how I deal with my problems. um like, ultimately, now you can't just be open about every little minute thing, but you've got to be selective in, like, literally listening and observing what's around you, observing the surroundings, and then getting help from people that's required, and also providing help as well. So that point really hit me big, right? I
Yeah.
never had someone to look up to like my parents in the professional side of things, even though my
Uh-huh.
parents were there in the professional side of things.
Yeah.
I did have my dad and my mom,
Yeah.
but when on an everyday basis, when you're facing challenges, you sometimes need mentor. Like, you always do need, like, it's not even sometimes. You always need mentors to be with you, right? And the mentors could be your friend, it could be anyone, the person sitting right next to you. So that's when it started hitting me, and I slowly started getting into the aspect of helping people and giving them what they required at that point in time.
Right. So you just like, we could talk about what you just shared, Jabez, like for a long time. And I think that's how we connected initially when we started talking about, first of all, the implications of life being challenging, right?
Hmm.
Like, I think when we enter adulthood, I think we believe it's going to be something a little bit different. And then we're in shock when sort of the institutions that we saw our parents working in and around, that perhaps we weren't walked through the reality of life, right?
Hmm.
And I'd like to even make reference to, what about individuals that didn't have that safe bubble household, right? That came out of a household where they didn't learn those basic connection, that human connection that we all want, right? We all want to belong. We all want to be accepted as we are. We all want to kind of have a safe place to be. Have you worked with clients that maybe didn't come from that safe bubble, and are trying to make their way into the world as it is?
Exactly. So that's where there's a very key thing that you can start working on, is actually trying to make them self-aware, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now they have
Yep.
issues dealing with themselves because they were not appreciated enough, probably, right?
Right.
Everyone's got to have problems. Everyone's going to have, and we as humans are always going to have problems, right?
Yep.
But the fact is, we don't dwell on the problem, we dwell on the situation, and we dwell on the present situation, and we look for solutions to overcome that, right? And that's when you've turned into an overcomer, you're not looking at the problem itself, but you're looking at how can I solve this problem, or how can I uh, do something that will make me surpass this problem in the most amicable way, right?
Right.
So that's where self-awareness is a big key. And secondly, you've got to be patient for yourself, like patient about
Yes.
yourself, for
Yes.
yourself, and patient for the process, right?
Yes.
um
Yes.
and a lot of times people get carried away because they're not able to endure the long term, because they're just looking for short term results.
Yes. Yes. And I've found, with regard to those short-term results, some miscommunication with the clients I work with, because I really, as a coach, everything you're saying is like, that's exactly what I do. I start with self-awareness. They're wanting to fix some external problem, right? They
Hmm.
come to me with what I call a pain point. They got a
Exactly.
pain point. Something is hurting, right? Guys, we end up at the doctor because something is hurting. We hadn't been to
Right.
the doctor in 5 years. Something starts hurting. We go to the doctor. Doctor says, why haven't I seen you in 5 years? Right? We could have caught
Right.
this, right? We could have been aware of it. So I want to invite people to even think about it from that perspective, as an analogy of your emotional and mental health requires maintenance, right? It requires us doing this work that, as you said, Jabez, starts with self-awareness. And when folks come to me, it's this external pain. And I say, well, we talk about the external pain. We can talk about that external pain until the cows come home, right?
Right.
But we will never solve that external pain because that's not your problem, right?
Exactly.
The external thing, those are always going to be there. But if we address the internal, right? If we address our self-awareness, are we dealing with our own the narratives that we have running in our head of who we are and what we believe and what we think we're capable of, and all of those stories that we have in our head? When we start looking at those, and with the help of a person like you, Jabez, or myself, or any mentor or educator or person who's out there serving in the world, can help begin to identify what's motivating our behavior, what's driving that. And then we get to the point where it's like, oh, okay. But I can't tell you how many times, Jabez, I have conversations with clients, and it's, the first half hour, we're talking
Hmm.
about this thing over there, or this
Right.
thing in their past.
Right.
And I keep going, redirect, redirect, redirect. Let's talk about you. What feelings is this bringing up in you?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that that process is not culturally, I think, especially in the United States, that is something that feels very foreign,
Hmm.
to people in the professional world, for sure. Have you had experience with that kind of people pushing back a little bit?
Oh yeah. So people push back for a lot of reasons, and one of the main reasons that people are pushing back is they're seeking validation from the people around them,
Yes.
right? And when you start seeking validation from the people right next to you, or from people across the room, who couldn't care less about what's actually going, like, they cannot empathize for you, but all they can do is criticize things about you, right?
Mhm.
And ultimately, if you're going to start seeking validation from people around you for doing like a step one, step two, step three, it's gonna be more like you're trying to please a set of people, or you're trying to please one or two people, right? And you yourself, with the 7 billion people around in the world, cannot please every one of them. So you've got to understand, like, now you got to understand what I'm good at, right?
Right.
And dwell on your strengths.
Yeah.
um Focus on your strengths. And I say this every time: never focus on your weaknesses, because your weaknesses are probably always going to remain as your weakness. You might improve, or you might handle them in a better way, but those are your pain points, and they might be pain points for a longer duration of time. But if you start focusing on your failures and your pain points, and your weaknesses, you most often tend to start taking more time to focus on that, and you leave away your strengths. And once you leave your strengths, you've forgotten that your strengths are there, so it's going to make you insecure itself,
Right.
right?
And it's even a process to, I've found a lot of people aren't even sure what their strengths are, because
Exactly.
there's this, I mean, I'm a recovering codependent and my audience knows this. So codependents are like the best at like being the chameleon, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are the first shapeshifters. We can shape ourselves to meet the needs of everyone around us, right? We're masters at it. The problem is we're not designed to be anything outside of our most authentic, purest self, what we were brought to this planet to do and to be, right? So when I focus on external, I call them external cues that I
Mm-hmm.
pick up on. When
Right.
I hear an external cue that it's going to somehow, it's asking something of me. It's telling me to shape my behavior or my response to meet the need of another human being. And we learn that at our earliest stages. We learn that behavior from our caretakers, from our parents, right?
Right.
So if we had parents where that were a little bit maybe more controlling or fearful or insecure in themselves, they're going to give another person an external cue that you should be fearful, you should
Right.
be accommodating, you should do the right thing, you should never break the rules, you should only do this, you ought not do that. And then if the kid does the thing, then the response is very clearly, hey, you did wrong, we're going to ignore you. Or you
Right.
did wrong, you're going to get disciplined. So then we learn, oh, in order for me to not feel pain, I will accommodate
Mm-hmm.
everyone around me. Right.
Right.
And so then that child never is able to truly kind of come to a place of, wow, this is my fullest self, right? Now,
Correct.
we do work, Jabez, this is the work that I do and you do with people that is so important. But oftentimes the pushback I get is that's too easy. You know,
Correct.
that's a shortcut. And I say this is going to be the hardest work you're going to ever do in your life is to really face yourself and to
Mm-hmm.
see that our behaviors aren't accidental. Our behaviors are not, they're very patterned. And when you really start looking at yourself, you can connect the dots from what I call the top of the iceberg to
Right.
what's beneath the waterline. So an
Correct.
iceberg, Jabez, as you know, is pretty big. And the
Correct.
top is really small, right?
Correct.
But the bottom, it's dark, it's scary, it's
Mm-hmm.
big. We don't want to
Right.
go down there because it feels scary. So I'd love to hear what you help your clients do with
Mm-hmm.
regard to dealing with all of that stuff that's unconscious, you know, that's beneath the waterline. What are the ways in which you help people kind of access those places in order to move forward in their lives?
Right. So, yeah. So again, coming back to things of how you actually break down problems, or how you actually break down things, right? Um, your mind literally functions as if it were a house with a million different rooms, right? So how you store or how you take things and where you store them is very important. Now, and that's when I say, uh, I don't try to get into the psychological aspect of things, but
Right.
I'm more of trying to read you and trying to understand you through working with you, right? And that's what I'm probably good at, and that's what I've always been able to do. Now, when you see this person is like, they're probably battling the things that they want to do, and they're battling it with the things that they're allowed to do,
Correct.
right? So so now what starts happening is they start seeing friction
Yes.
uh between their choices and what's actually out there for them. Now, again and again, you start, when you sit down with them, the core principles, like when you want to, when you what you want to do or what you want to pursue, is going to come down and break down into, am I happy?
Yep.
Right? Are you happy or are you satisfied? Now, if you're not, if you're answering no to both of those, then you might as well make some changes when you can, right? So
Right.
because when you do not make those changes when you can, that's when you're going to start regretting it when you cannot, like when you've run out of those times. So I always say that you've got to break down your problems, you've got to break down and make sure that you've like literally jot it down. It doesn't matter how you do it, right? You could write it down, you could actually pen it down on sticky notes or anything, like however it works for you,
Right.
right? You could maybe record yourself speaking, and that's something that you're going to play it and like go and revisit it a couple of times. And no, you've got to find something that works for you.
Right.
and and once you've done that, you start repeating it and you start focusing on what you actually want to do. You start mapping, like literally just like how you would brainstorm for a creative project,
Right.
and and make that project your journey. Your
Yes.
journey is your project, right?
Yep.
and
Mhm.
and and what I mean by your journey is basically your life. Your particular life itself is a journey. Look at your
Right.
life as a journey,
Right.
right? And I always say this again: be you and build you. So, and
Yes.
while you're being you, right?
Yes.
And
Yep.
while you're being you, and I have an acronym for YOU,
Oh yeah.
right?
What is it?
Your your own universe,
Oh, yeah, that's great.
right? So be you, but like just be your own universe and build your own universe. So just focus on the you part of things and what you can fulfill from your side, right? Then
Yes.
start narrating things around that, and then
Yes.
start bringing the outer implications and how that's going to work, how the nitty gritties, right? The nuances for every business will be different,
Right.
but when you break it down in terms of your vision and your goals and how you're going to operate on a structural basis, is probably and most often going to be the same, because how you're breaking down a situation is going to be the same, like the first time, the second time, the third time.
Right.
It's just that you're going to keep refining and fine tuning so that you make it work.
Yes. So don't you think though that that big question, and this is what I do, is my motto is you can feel good even when life doesn't, because people are convinced they cannot feel good if life doesn't feel good. Like
Mm-hmm.
they want both sides of that equation to be equal, right? And
Right.
the first thing you realize is what you described, right? You grew up in a safe home, a loving home, you were supported and encouraged, and then that bubble went pop, and you were thrust
Right.
out into this world where people are going to be unkind to you, people are going to be
Correct.
rude, people are going to reject you, people are going to stab you in the back, people are going to steal
Correct.
from you, betray you, and then all of a sudden this safety is gone, And then the only thing left is accolades, right? Well, if I work hard enough, I'll get this award and then people will like me. If
Right.
I do enough for my friends, then they'll like me. So the are you happy, I think, is the biggest pain point, right? But to get people to that you are your own universe, that must take a lot of work to get them to that place where that going from external to internal seems to be, for me, the biggest barrier that I run into with
Right.
clients is they struggle with the work that I ask them to do with regard to, let's determine what you like. What do you dislike? What's your favorite color? Where do you like to vacation? Simple questions like that. They feel stuck and they want to
Right.
go, well, what do you think it is? Well, no, that's not what I'm asking. What is yours? So that pain point and like walking people through that, how does that work for you in what you do?
Right. So, like the way I look at things is more in a binary perspective. It's either yes or a no, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So there's no half answers. There's no like no smudging the line. There's no in betweens. There's nothing. So it's either yes and you're full on. Or
no.
it's either a no and you're not doing it.
Yeah.
So that's what makes it a little simpler for me, right? Now,
Right.
when you're focusing on, let's say, for example, remorse or any sadness, your mind is gonna think about what exactly is the core problem there. It's happened. It's done. Now it takes 2 or 3 minutes to actually just get over it.
Right.
Right. But in actual fact, for a lot of people, it breaks them.
Oh,
Right.
explain that. It breaks them.
It breaks them in the sense that they're sitting and dwelling on that so long that they're not able to come out of it.
They're stuck.
Now, the more you keep dwelling on that and the more you keep thinking about that problem and that situation, or someone who passed away, for example, and the more you keep digging deep into that, you're basically digging a wound, right? You're just pulling out and you keep pulling out stuff. You keep hurting yourself, and you're making the wound bigger and bigger, right? Rather than actually trying to understand that it's happened. Now, how do I get from that situation from point A to point B? Like, now, how do I overcome?
Yes. So like,
right?
Yeah. So I do a lot of work with, so like, first of all, I'm not a licensed mental health therapist. So I'm not going into people's trauma in order to excavate it. Like, right. I know where my limitations are, and I know that's not what I'm about. I definitely am about identifying the wound, right? It's very important to see the brain does not like blanks. The brain, as you know, will fill in the blanks. It will make up stories about what you think happened, and it will, and next thing you know, you're basing your whole career off of a story your brain made up. Okay.
Exactly.
So knowing that, when we say, maybe there's, because I deal a lot with emotional health, right? Helping people acknowledge, name, identify their emotions. Because so much of our society is the neck down is cut off. Very analytical society, right? But the brain was not intended to run the whole human being, right?
Right.
Like the brain has a function. It's just like a computer, right?
Right.
What you put into it is what you get out of it. And that's just all there is to it. But the emotion, our emotional health and our spiritual health, is this wisdom that is untapped. And I do think it's important for folks to be able to say, I'm grieving. And for simply to say, I'm grieving, that's sufficient. That's a lot. Okay, you're dealing with grief. You've lost a loved one, or maybe you've lost a best friend. Sometimes we associate grief with has to be this big thing, when it could just be, hey, me and my best friend aren't best friends anymore, and I'm really sad about that because she was supportive, right? Or I changed careers. I think I wanted to do it, but now I'm sad because I miss the people that were associated with that career. Or, or I moved to a new state and I miss that my old house. And I go, okay, well,
Right.
that's grief. So we name it, but we don't go around there. Now let's just talk about how awful that feels. Right. Right.
Right.
It's see it, name it. Okay. That's the pain point. Great. Now just by naming it and identifying it and talking through it, you begin to feel what I call a release.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to get it out. So
Right.
writing it down, like you said, I use writing prompts with my clients where it's just, the situation was this, I felt this, this feeling reminds me of usually a past
Right.
experience. How I can show up for myself now is, and it's this
Right.
perpetual of acknowledging reality, because so much of our society is about denying reality. We don't want to
Right.
see it for what it actually is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then we can see the reality. This is the situation that triggered me. This emotion
Right.
happened. And when I felt that emotion, I wanted to repress it, but I didn't. I felt it. And then my
Hmm.
brain's like, oh, good, we're not going to die. We're not going to die. And no, we're not going to die. We're just having an emotion. The brain goes, cool. Okay.
Right.
And then the brain's like, great, we're not dying. So how can I help? Because that's what the
Right.
brain is designed to do. The brain is
Exactly.
brilliant, but it's not there to hold all of our pain and trauma. And that's where, when we disconnect from our bodies, I find
Mm-hmm.
we lose that wisdom. You know what I
Right.
mean?
And that's a very good point, because that's where I neatly put it, that we have to patiently wait for the process to finish, right?
Yes.
Or you practice slowing down and allow
Yes.
your system to reset, right?
Yes.
Now the thing is, because we're in a very fast-paced world where technology, everything is coming in very fast, right? You want you want to do a research, Google's right there in your
Right.
fingertips,
Right.
right? You want, like, you're seeing technology move every 6 months now, and a new phone comes out every 6 months, right? Now, can you adapt to that speed of what, like, how the world is moving, or are you trying to just keep up to that speed, or are you gonna actually slow down and try to understand, where do I fit in, and
Right.
how can I build myself, build others around me, and take things in an empathetical manner, but by actually putting yourself into situations and playing it, and making sure that you can help others and bring yourself up to mark,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
And that's where the helping nature, and that's where your success should actually lie. Like, I'm not saying that that's the only way, but that's the way you could, like, persistently and confidently be just yourself, and still be able to evolve around with having so many effects of different people, mindset, a lot of different perspective, and still being accommodating to all that's around you, and being yourself at the same time.
Yes. So it's not even, it's learning. If we can learn how to show up for ourselves with compassion and kindness
Right.
when life throws something at us, because it will, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
guaranteed. Something,
Right.
I kind of make light of it now, but because I have to, because as a home that I grew up in, it was a little unstable, right? So
Mm-hmm.
safety is really important to me. So I came into this world, growing up as an adult, with protection, right? You probably
Okay.
felt like free, I can connect. I felt I've got to protect, right? It's
Right.
dangerous, scary. So I
Mm-hmm.
had all these coping mechanisms of control and like hypervigilance and,
Okay. Okay.
to try to make sure I stayed safe all the time. Okay. That was my
Okay.
goal. Just be safe. Okay. And there's a lot of
Right.
people running around and they all got armor on and they're like armored up and they're just like, gotta be safe, gotta be safe. So they're avoiding, repressing, denying, all the things that we all do at given trauma, given any sort of experience where we felt rejection or blame or fear or lack of safety. So if
Mm-hmm.
I believe that humans are born to connect with one another.
Right.
I believe we come into this world, and the purest, most wonderful thing about a little baby is its desire to make eye contact, right?
Right.
We want to connect. But when in our earliest years, we felt disconnection from our caregivers, we felt pain. It hurt. So then we get this fear of relationships hurt. So I will avoid those certain aspects of a relationship because it hurts. So we're fearful to connect. So my teaching is, how can I help people feel safe enough, recognize that they're not in danger, but that they can be safe for themselves. Like, there is a 12-year-old version of me inside. There's a 25-year-old version. There's a 35, 45.
Right.
Okay. I have all of these little Heathers in me, just like you have all of these little Jabez in you, right?
Right.
That are talking, and that at different times are going to feel and respond from those experiences that shape them. And that's okay. But learning how to show up for ourselves and say, okay, Heather, I get you're feeling fearful. All right, that's okay. Well, we got this, right?
Right.
And I think being able to do that without judging ourselves, because I think I've even heard myself say to myself, I had a failed marriage, for example. Okay. So it needed to end, but I really felt like that version of me felt like I'd failed. Okay. And that shame that came with that. And I had to do a lot of work with my therapist to come to terms with the fact that I was assigning shame to something that I chose to be free of. But then I attached blame, self-blame to it. And then it became this kind of me avoiding myself about this kind of shame that I had associated with the failed marriage. Now, that's after 20 years of therapy. I've been in therapy for a long time, okay? So it's human for us to do that, right? Where we'll blame ourselves or betray ourselves in order to what we think is fix a problem, right? If we can blame ourselves, then that's why it happens. So it totally makes sense. So what's the point of even trying again? Because it's just going to happen again, right? That mindset. So I think it would be I think it's important to learn how to respond compassionately and show up for ourselves. And then, like you just said, in order to show up for ourselves, we have to be willing to let go of control. And slow down. And in a culture where everything's immediate gratification, everything's right at our fingertips, I wonder if our brains just, it's like I know mine does, the monkey mind. You know what I mean? It's like as soon as I have to sit down and try to be still in meditation, it's all over the place. It's lit up like a Christmas tree, right? So I think, what are your tips to help people slow down and trust the process? What are some of the ways that you've helped, educate people on what can work for them as far as variety and different ways to kind of stay engaged in the process?
Finding a balance is one thing, right? Striking a balance between what you have to put out and what you have to just shut down, right? Understanding where to accelerate, where to break, right? That's one key thing. And then another thing that I always speak about or always try to inculcate into people is pattern recognition. Right? Try to understand what patterns you play with, right? Try to understand, and this works even for business, right? Understand your pattern, understand what you're actually doing and how you get the job done. Right? The way you work and the way you get the job done, there might be a pattern to it. And that's the same pattern that's going to apply to everything, right? And it might not be 100% exact, but that's where you're mix and matching. That's where the balance part comes in.
Right.
That's where your adaptation skills come in, right? And that's where you're
Yes.
adapting to the surroundings or the situation.
Yes.
So balance, adapt, and pattern recognition is like probably all hand in hand,
Yes.
right? It's all coming into one circle,
And
right?
do you think that creativity plays a part in that? Creativity, imagination?
Yeah, of course. So creativity and imagination is something that everyone has, and it's either you've put it so that you shut it down, or you've actually thought about using it, right? Like
Right.
there's only two ways. Like everyone has a certain amount of creativity and innovation, but it's either you've shut it and like and you've just neglected it the whole way through, even if you've had it, right? And that doesn't mean that your creativity only comes in um where you want it to come in, right? Like
Right.
now I want to sit and write, and I want to be a creative writer. No, it doesn't work like that. It works, your creativity will work where you want, like where it should work for you, right?
Yes.
And again, that's again coming back to your strengths and not your weaknesses.
And aligning, yes. So knowing your strengths and leaning into your strengths with regard to
Mm-hmm.
understanding that strengths aren't always going to be, there's a part of us that maybe we may be disconnected from, right?
Right.
And so there are a lot of tools that we can use to help us define our strengths, right? Really find
Correct.
out what we enjoy. Guys, there's like Myers-Briggs, you can figure out your personality type, and you can do DISC and figure out, your kind of your leadership potential in careers. Then there's Strength Finders is another one. There's all these tests that you can do. I've done all of them, and they all kind of say the same thing, which indicate it's very clear, this is kind of my temperament and personality. However, I think also there is this, the more we get aligned with our values, like what really matters to us, bottom line,
Right.
the more aligned we're going to feel with regard to our passion and calling. And then that strategically aligns us with our career choice, that strategically aligns us with what community am I going to serve? How am I going to support this nonprofit? How am I going to run my business? What are my missions going to be? What am I going to be intentional about with regard to relationships in my professional world and relationships in my personal?
Right.
So that's kind of like my treasure box, is when I walk people through defining what their values are,
Right.
and I always, in fact, my values are important enough that I remind myself daily about experimentation. So for example, in our very first conversation, Jabez, that we had, when we first connected, and I was just like, well, we connected on Instagram, and I was like, I don't know this guy, but I
Right.
thought, wait a second, Heather, we are curious by nature. This is experimentation. We're going to learn something. We're going to meet someone new, and we're going to be able to expand our horizons, because I'm insatiably curious. And I know you're the same way. You like to learn. And so we had a great conversation, but that's an example of really me trying to, knowing and understanding that anxiety or fear or insecurity or all the things that are going to be what I could once perceive as weaknesses, I just recognize them now as, oh, those are the parts of me that are there. There's a fearful me, there's an insecure me, and that's cool. You can totally be here on the bus with me, but I'm the one driving the bus, right? Like I'm the one going down the road. I'm in charge of that, and I can make those decisions. But those parts of me are welcome, rather than, because I do hear language of, if that's a weakness, that's not part of me. And I think our weaknesses can inform us and are very helpful parts of us for different phases in our life.
Self-awareness.
Yep.
And that's what it breaks down to, right? And I like I can't break it down enough. Like, you've got to understand yourself. You've got to learn about yourself. You've got to understand what you've got to do, when you've got to do it, and right. And it all comes down to that. Now, and I like, even people looking for their dream job, like, I want to pursue, this is what I want, this is my dream job. There is no such thing. It's literally like when you go fishing and you're baiting the fish out, and your dream job is just going to bait you out, right? It's not existent, right? You've got to understand that you have to understand for yourself what you need, what you require. So write down your vision, write down your mission, write down what you want, write down what's your passion, what's your goals, match them and align them, and bring it down to where you actually fit in.
Yep.
Right. And that might be starting a business, that might be working in a big NGO, it might be a social service setup, or you setting up an NGO itself. No, it doesn't, like you setting up a nonprofit or anything, right? It doesn't really, like, it's not confined. That's what I'm trying to say, right? The options are open, opportunities are plenty. You've got to grab it.
Yes.
Right? And you've got to work for it. You've got to do the right things for it, and you've got to grab it. And it's not going to be handed to you on a silver platter.
No.
And if that's what you're looking for, I'm sorry, there's no answer to that.
Yeah, and that's where the real work is, right? Like,
Right.
I don't know who I was listening to the other day. It was a podcast, one of the podcasts I was listening to, and I was really struck by that. This isn't going to be, when you see and meet people that you feel like bring a lot of wisdom, bring a lot of honesty and authenticity, transparency, truth telling with kindness, truly
Right.
just magically empathetic.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing magic about it. They worked their tail off to
Right.
get to that place, right? Like,
Very true.
this is it's magical in the sense of it does often feel like magic when your purest purpose comes alive and you feel like you're what I call in flow, and you are aligned with the gifts that you have, the capabilities that you have, your strengths. You have clarity, you're focused. It's not foggy. It's just everything's crystal clear. I think
Right.
it doesn't happen every day for me, for sure, because I'm human, right? And things trigger me all over the place, right? And I get upset, or I get mad, or there's conflict, or there's a misunderstanding. But on the days when it's clear and everything seems so simplistic, in the sense of, I know exactly the next step I need to take, right?
Right.
That, I think, is what you're describing, is there's this crystal clarity on understanding who you are. And the only way you're
Right.
going to understand who you are is to go within.
Right.
And be patient enough to allow the unraveling of all the things within, with the help of a therapist, with the help of a coach like myself, with the help of whoever, or just simply talking about it can really bring a lot of that release. And then once you're compassionately saying, hey, wow, I did the best I could do. Now I'm ready to try this. Now I'm
Right.
ready to lean into what I believe. Now I'm ready to really talk to Jabez or Heather about, you know what, this really matters to me. And I feel really passionate about it, because
Right.
once all that other emotional Velcro, right, that's been stuck all over us by life, by everybody else's opinion, right? You know, that, you wanted to do a venture and then you told somebody and they were like, oh, that's a stupid idea. That's an
Exactly.
example of somebody throwing their emotional trash at you, and it sticks to you. You got to take that stuff off, and you feel confident in who you are and what you are called to do. And to me, it sounds so easy, but it is not. It is hard work.
Right.
And no one's going to give it to you. I can guarantee you, and Jabez, you know this too, right? There's no degree that's going to give that to you.
Correct.
There's no certification 100%. Course that's going to give that to you. There's no accolade. There's no award. I don't care if you spent, 6 weeks sitting in a temple somewhere and you were just listening, but not applying any of it. Would it matter?
Right.
No. Because it's really doing its application, it's showing up, it's trying new things, it's letting go of people pleasing, it's being self-aware enough to recognize, wow, I made a mistake. I need to own it, take responsibility for my feelings. No one
Right.
makes me feel anything. Like these
Right.
little tiny things that can change us big time.
Correct.
But there's, it's like a big inventory of these little things that happen as you begin the journey
Very true.
to personal awareness and personal growth. And you don't get it all at once. You're not going to get it all. It's not like a download, guys. It's not like you buy the $29 software and you download it and it's there.
There's
right?
never a life hack, right? There's never a
No.
life hack to something.
No.
Right? Like oftentimes you're seeing there's a hack to this, there's a hack to that, a hack to exploding on social media and so on. I mean, there's no hack for it. You've got to work for it, you've got to earn it, right? And you've got to be optimistic about whatever you do.
Yes.
And that's one big word again, which is often not even looked upon, right?
Right.
If you're an optimistic person, you're not just considered like, I'm not being optimistic because I just choose to avoid or neglect the negatives. It's because I know that if there is a negative, or if there is something that's on the downhill, there's always an uphill.
Yeah.
And if there is a negative, there's always a positive, right? So which always means that when there's a problem, there's always a solution.
Yes.
So how are you looking at things? Are you going to look at things that are in a binary perspective, or are you going to bring in all the wavering thoughts of a maybe and then that and this, like this complicating it further and so on? There's nothing to complicate it, right? Look at it as it is, and look at it on a blank sheet of paper, like black and white. Look at it literally on black and white, and then you will literally figure out where you stand and how you stand and how you can actually take it further and into the next step.
Yes. And I say it's one of those things, it's like a full body yes. If I don't get a full body yes on it, I'm not doing it. Like it's not a, I think there's sometimes maybe and try. I like those words, especially when I'm working with people's emotions, because sometimes people feel very self-judgmental of trying to say how they exactly feel. They're not sure. So those words are helpful, but definitely with regard to mindset, is try to be clear as possible. Try to be as connected to your body as possible when you are thinking about what matters to you. And not searching on Google, okay? And not calling your grandma and not asking they're not you. They're not you. Some of the best people I've met, we see these creative artists, and the best people I've ever met have this ability to feel so secure in who they are and their weird, wacky, wonderful ways. And that's endearing and wonderful to be with and around. And I think sometimes we feel limited because we think that we're going to be looked down upon, or we're going to be made fun of. And then when you start talking about stuff like that, all the experiences from your past are going to come up, and that's where we go. And we go, oh, that was from there. That's not part of me anymore. I can do this. I can move forward. Yeah. Great stuff. Well, Jabez, I'm pretty sure we could just keep talking about this. So did you get a chance to see that I have my 5 questions that I like to ask you at the end? Did you see that? I have 5 surprise questions.
Really? Okay.
You ready?
Let's shoot it.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So what do you do for fun? Capital Fun. What do you do for fun?
So Yeah, what do I do for fun? So I'm always trying to be out on the sports field or try to hit the gym whenever I can, and that's always been my way of taking out time for myself.
Oh, awesome. Okay, what do you play? What games?
So I play football, I play cricket, I play table tennis. So these are my main sports, and either one of them,
Table tennis
whenever I
is
get.
hardcore. Okay, so I was watching table tennis on the Olympics, and
Okay.
and they, I mean, I used to play, we call it ping pong in the States.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it was like I barely hit it, but I mean, that's some serious stuff, that table tennis. I was very impressed. Okay, what is on your bedside table?
What is on my bedside table? Pretty much nothing. Pretty
Nothing?
much. Pretty much nothing. Yeah.
Okay. All right. What is your favorite song right now?
My favorite song. Uh, you're really putting me on the spot,
Our
right?
favorite music style.
Favorite music style, pop.
Pop. Okay.
Right.
And uh, here's the last one. So life shows up and hits you real hard.
Okay.
What's the first thing you do?
The first thing I do, to be honest, it's probably I'm not heartless, but I really look at what's the end result, right?
Okay.
So I dive into the end result. So and this happens to me a lot of times, even for example when it's more about reading the last lines of the book or the summary at the end and seeing what it's about and then going back and starting and then no. So I really focus myself on looking at the result at that point in time. And then I do, yes, of course, I do come back into it and then try to understand and put myself into place. But more often than not, I look at the end situation.
All right. That's actually really great. I do that a lot in my business, where I always kind of focus on the end result and I work backwards
Yeah,
from the end
true.
result. So that's great. Very problem solving oriented. I think that's awesome. I think that's awesome. Okay, well, Jabez, it has been great talking with you. I'm so glad that we were able to spend this time together. More to come, I'm sure, and I look forward to seeing your content and what you have out there, and just learning right along with you.
Take care, Heather, and it was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful being with you. And no, look forward to your stuff as well. And I see a lot of positive things coming up.
Thank you, sir. Have a good one. Take care. Thank you, everybody. Have a great
Take care.
day.
Have a good night. Bye.